Aronian representing now the US. And here we go, the game just started.
The game has just started, and it's the 4 knights variation. As you can see, all 4 knights coming out, but it's the 4 knights variation of the English opening. And after a set of exchanges, both sides are just going to develop very nicely now. This last bishop move is very, very trendy, very fashionable. And it has caused Sam Sevian, however, to think. And we should mention a bit of backstory to this game. Both players have Armenian roots. I think both players born in Armenia, or at least Levon Aronian represented Armenia for a long time. Sam Sevian, after being born in Armenia, did move over to the US with his family. And Sam, the one thing I'm impressed by him, maybe the most impressive thing for me at least, is that he plays correspondence chess, which means, which means you can use books, you can use computers, you can do what you want, but you have a certain amount of time, and then you send your move to your opponent. Then they have maybe a few days to think of their move, and you play maybe one move every day or two. Yeah, he's one of the best players in the world there as well.
And how long will those games go on for then? Like months, years even?
They used to.
I was going to say that. Before it was by post and sometimes by fax in those good old days. And yeah, you used to have these world correspondence matches, and they would go on for years.
Wow.
But now I guess would be a month.
Email, maybe?
Yeah, I think maybe up to weeks, maybe a month, yeah. I think as well, for example, on Chess24, you can play a move and then you just leave it there, and then your opponent will come back a couple of days later, they'll play the move, you just see it being updated, you get a notification, and yeah, I don't have the patience for it, but that's why I'm so impressed by Sam Sevian. And that also shows that he works well with books, he knows how to work well with computers, because imagine all of your opponents have access to computers, you all have access to the best moves, you all see that everything should be a draw, but you find ways to trick your opponent, you find small advantages here and there. And
how is it possible to win if both sides can use computers? There would never be blunders.
There will never be big blunders, but that's where I think you have to really understand how to use computers, and also you use the human touch. You look for positions where you can dominate. You might see that a computer might say, oh, it's roughly level, but you dominate your opponent's army, and long term you win. Using that type of domination, and a draw is a very common result, we should say, in correspondence chess nowadays, but yeah, it's definitely an art form.
How cool. And well, Sam Sevian, great at correspondence chess, but he's also great at online rapid chess. We see him with 14 points, and we didn't have a chance to look at results from previous round 6, so we're going to take a look at results and standings now, because both Sam Sevian and Levon Aronian, they are coming from wins. We had a lot of decided games in the previous round. Jeffrey Chong did get a walkover win against Timur Rajabov. Sam, as we mentioned, a win against fellow American Hans Niemann. Levon Aronian, he beat Arjan Tari. And a win for Radoslav Wojtacek against Ju Wenjun, a win for the youngest player in the tournament, Arjun Erigaisi, against Sam Shanklin, and Wei Yi, he won his game against Shakhriyar Mamdyarov. So now let's take a look at the standings, because look at that. We still have those 2 young Americans on top of the table. Jeffrey with 15 out of 18 possible points. Sam with 14, impressive. And Erigaisi, only 18 years old. He is in 3rd place. Jan Christoph Duda, 24, in 4th place. Wei Yi, I think he's only 23. I mean, the youngsters, you have Shakhriyar Mamdyarov, you know, the only one sort of protecting the honor of the older group.
He is, isn't he? He's the only one. And
Levon is climbing.
On the other half, you only have Arjan Tari, actually, who's there. With the oldies, but I mean the oldies, they're not really very old.
They're not old, they're just older.
Yes,
than
exactly.
The very young group of players on top of the table.
Yeah.
How cool.
The top 5, they're all between 18 and, 23, 24?
Yeah.
So, it's scary how good these guys are at such a young age. And Sam Sevian, we should mention, he's on a roll. I think he's won 3 games in a row now. Yesterday, beating Jeffrey Chong in the last game, and then winning the first 2 games today. So he definitely won't be scared of his now compatriot, Levon Aronian.
Yeah. And, well, let's dive into the game. What are we looking at here? They played very fast, first 13 moves.
Yeah, we haven't commented too much on the moves because most of it's been seen before. At least until the last couple of moves, I'd seen everything in analysis and in games over the board. But this last couple of moves, we should mention the pawn structure as well. It's slightly imbalanced. same pieces, same number of pawns. But white does have one extra central pawn right now. White's structure is very compact, just like we saw in Giri's game in the last round. White's pawns all defend each other. They're very modestly placed. White's minor pieces also very modestly placed at the moment, but they are full of potential. Especially I'm looking at that bishop in front of the white king. It's on a nice long diagonal. White's knight has several squares it might want to jump into. White's rook in the corner might want to swing across to the c-file, where it will have a few targets. It will be on a semi-open file there. So White's position has a lot of potential. Meanwhile, Black has some work to do because Black has a bit more space. Black's last move, pushing a pawn, gaining space on the queen side, looks great. Black has a nice pawn in the middle of the board as well. But as we know, with great space comes great responsibility, and Black will need to cover all of those pawns, need to cover all of the squares that he's taken control of. And traditionally, I quite like these positions for White, especially now there has been a trade earlier of one set of knights, which means despite White being a bit cramped, it doesn't matter so much. The rest of his pieces, the remaining pieces for White, can jump to better squares. Black does have a few more holes, and also Black's queen, it's kind of leading from the front at the moment, and that is maybe not an ideal situation. Queens, normally, they want to be bringing up the rear of your army. They want to be supporting, and only later in the game do they want to break forward and be the dominant attacking piece. So Black's queen, it's been kicked about a couple of times already. I'm scared that Levon Aronian will need to move that queen a couple more times in order to put it on a good square later. So just a few factors there. At the moment, Sam Sevian, I just have a feeling he's deciding where to jump forward with the white knight. He has maybe 3 very tempting squares right now. Also, the white queen might want to improve, the white rook in the corner. You have a whole bunch of pawns to push, and this type of position, it appeals to flexible players who just want to kind of freestyle what kind of plan to come up with. But there's a lot of choice, and that's maybe a downside. In the end, wow, he pushes his pawn 2 squares forward. This is committal. It leaves a hole. It leaves an outpost on the square next to it, but it does stop Black from advancing. So pros and cons with this one. Maybe we can just show the drawback behind Sam Sevian's last move. He's just completely given away control over the b4 square, which is now an outpost for Black's bishop or for the Black knight. But at the same time, it's often important to stop your opponent advancing. For example, if he pushed this pawn 1 square, Black continue advancing, and Black has completely clamped down on this side of the board. This pawn is fantastic, supported by the Black rook, and White will never be able to use these squares again. For example, now, after pushing this pawn forward, yes, he's given away 1 square, but he wins the square next to that. Now, this knight can never be kicked away by a Black pawn. Yeah, ups and downs. It's all about these small kind of strategic factors right now. It's not about tactics. It's not about an attack. White would love to place a knight on this square. And what is Black doing in the meantime? That's the question. For example, Black's queen might want to move out the way in order to get this bishop out into the action. Maybe the queen will move and this bishop might develop. Ivanka, any preferences here? Whose side would you pick in the current position?
White.
White.
White, because, I mean, you kind of called it there. I just like the value of the light squared bishop. It's on a fantastic diagonal. And also, you know, White has a also relatively straightforward plan of just putting a rook on the half-open line and exerting some pressure. You know, White's knight, like you mentioned, there's so many flexible options. Meanwhile, the only plan that I could see for Black was to simply go for checkmate, so to speak. You know, move the queen to the h5 square and then follow that up with bishop h3, stopping. Oh, look at that!
You spotted the future. you really should buy a lottery ticket, Ivanka. You always guess the players' moves.
Yeah. I always worry for the players when they play my moves. Yeah, I mean, this was the only thing that I could see actually.
Yeah, to trade off White's best minor piece. This is the best minor piece for sure. It keeps the White king safe. It's actually the only defender of White's king. And, of course, it just has so much influence long-term on this diagonal. So maybe attacking the White king, but more importantly, for example, if White just improves a piece, Black is just going to eliminate the best piece in White's camp. And once you trade this off, now protected by the Black queen, then Black has decent chances. It's all about whether White can stop this idea of the bishop coming forward. One thing you definitely don't want to do as White is get greedy here. You can get greedy and win a pawn by playing bishop takes knight, ruining the Black pawn structure, actually. And you can win this pawn on the a5 square, but suddenly look how bereft of defenders the white king is. The white king has no protection around it. Black's bishop is going to come into the attack. I could definitely imagine the black queen somehow sneaking in to the g2 square, and this would be checkmate eventually.
Yeah,
Definite no-no.
You know, don't be tempted to swap off your light squared bishop that protects the king. I mean, I've seen many people get greedy, not just for a pawn, but for a rook, for instance. They grab it and they're like, yes, 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 got my material. And I'm like, but look at your poor king. It's all alone. And unfortunately, yeah, you don't want to do that. Don't be greedy. Greed is not good here.
Yeah. It's all about whether white can keep this bishop on the board. If he can, he has the advantage. If he can't, then black is doing okay.
Yeah.
Well, we should urge all our viewers to be greedy, because there is a free FTX key up for grabs for everyone. So we're not only giving you guys the FTX road to Miami, it's actually going to be a whole summer of chess. This tournament is leading up to the big major coming in August. It's going to take place in Miami. 8 players will be on site to fight it out in that major, and that's going to be the FTX Crypto Cup. And FTX, they want to give out these free keys that unlock this really, really cool community. And if you join that community, you can win amazing prizes, actually up to $100,000 up for grabs. There's going to be exclusive content. And what you do is you scan this QR code, or you go to ftxcryptocup.com. You sign up for your free key. You become a member of this Discord community. And you can just participate in all the action taking place both in the tournament, but also behind the scenes with a bunch of prizes, for example. I really urge you guys to get your free key. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun summer of chess.
Yeah, it's a great way to just join a community, support the show, you know, also exchange ideas with fellow like-minded chess players.
Yeah.
And of course, like you said, prizes. Who wants prizes? I want prizes.
I know.
That's why these guys play chess, for prizes.
Yeah. All you have to do is sign up for your free key. And FTX, it is one of the world's leading providers in crypto industry and trading cryptocurrencies. Future, that as well.
Yeah, meanwhile, look at the players. They're basically mimicking each other's poses, both of them with their hands on their head. Oh, Sam Sevian just changed his posture there, but both of them super determined to win this game. It's maybe more important for Levon Aronian. He's around the magical 8th spot right now. I think he's occupying that 8th spot. He needs to start winning more games. And Sam Sevian just on fire this tournament, lifting his queen up 1 square, attacking black's A pawn now. And what is Levon Aronian going to do? Is he going to use that bishop maneuver we mentioned? Is he going to attack a few pawns with his bishop instead? He needs to find a move.
He definitely does need to find a move. And, well, he's in thinking mode. And whilst he's about to take a decision over the board, well, we talked about prizes earlier. We do have a quiz of the day to celebrate the great match between Boris Spassky and Bobby Fischer, where we're asking, who do you hold as the biggest champion in chess history? And Carlengo Simikoko says that their biggest champion is Magnus Carlsen. His brilliance exceeds chess, proving his memory, IQ and resilience goes head-to-head with the estimated best out there with doctors, engineers, lawyers, teachers, name them. His involvement in soccer and all-knows just shows he's an all-round. And recently he was in Las Vegas playing poker, as if that's not enough.
And he's been in the lead in fantasy football as well.
Yeah.
Very talented, Magnus Carlsen.
Great mind there.
Yeah.
And, OK, we do see Levon actually develop the light square bishop and challenge Sevian's light square. And we also have Gaurav Mukherjee, who says that to them, the biggest champion in chess history is the 8th world chess champion, the magician from Riga, Mikhail Tal. Watching him dominate over the Sicilian defence gave glimpses of the Romantic era. Gold and silver coins on the board. Oh, yeah. He was a fabulous player. You know, he really did create something mystical over the board. And, you know, there's sacrifices, and then there were his sacrifices. So, I mean, yeah, it is a fantastic choice.
Simon's favourite player, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think Simon's recorded a chessball course on some of Mikhail Tal's best games, best attacks.
Yeah, and Simon is joining us tomorrow.
He will be. We're looking forward to having that.
Absolutely.
But meanwhile, David, there was a really unexpected move, at least for me, on the board. Were you expecting the trade of bishops to happen like that?
I was, but not on these terms, essentially. And we talked about greed not being good, at least on the chessboard. But Sam Sevian, he's being extremely greedy right now. Will he get punished? That is the question. And we have to jump in because Jovanka was shocked by this move. I wasn't expecting it either. Okay, we have to catch up, but this bishop trade, it was going to happen. But why not just let black spend the move exchanging your bishop? Instead, you trade bishops yourself and you let the black queen even closer, inching closer now to the white king. And this spells doom for the white king. Black's queen, how are you ever going to evict it as well? How are you ever going to kick it away? All it needs is a bit of backup. Meanwhile, Sevian's idea was to go and grab a pawn on the edge of the board. This pawn, though, looks irrelevant. And after a knight trade, Aronian is attacking. He's pushed his pawn forward one square. Now he intends to push it even further down the board. He wants to break open this diagonal for the black bishop. If you eliminate this pawn, meanwhile, is Aronian's idea to lift his rook up?
Yeah.
Swing it across.
Yes, swing it across, in the words of Simon. It's a swinger.
It's a swinger, and it could be a winner.
Oh, very good. Very good, David.
If the rook swings across, this is just going to be checkmate on this square. How do you defend this pawn?
OK. How? I mean...
Maybe could you play bishop takes pawn and try and protect it like this, using your bishop along this diagonal, but your king looks so weak.
I did think about that. I thought about doing it with the queen, but that's not...
Doing it with the queen,
no,
so
but
maybe
a queen
in this fashion.
Yeah, but it would lose. It would lose the bishop. So.
Yeah. In this position, your bishop is hanging, but you are counter-attacking against this rook. Maybe the problem is that the black bishop can drop back and danger on this diagonal. But look at the white king in all of these variations. The white king is the target and no defenders around it. Let's go back to the players, because in the current position, huge attack incoming. Levon Aronian, he's asking big questions of his young rival.
Yeah. Oh, such danger on the board for Sevian. How much time does he have? He doesn't have that much time on the clock. I mean, he has 6.5 minutes, plenty of time normally, but not when there is trouble brewing.
Not when you're facing one of the most famous, most fearsome attacking players of his generation, like Aronian.
Oh, but look at his glasses. We can actually see his screen reflecting in his glasses. That's very cool.
Yeah. There's a famous photograph, right, of a chess player with, I think it's Bent Larsen.
Okay, possibly.
With his chessboard reflected in his glasses. It's very, very cool.
Look, they actually look very much the same, both from Armenia. Kind of the same glasses and the same posture right there.
Yeah, just like earlier, the same pose.
Yeah.
There is an Armenian school of chess, actually. And they have a certain way of playing, which is very provocative.
Oh.
So, they don't make too many committal pawn moves. Actually, in fact, I'm thinking, David, you could almost be an honorary Armenian. And then they just wait for the opponent to overextend themselves. And then they come forward and get you on a counterattack.
But Aronian isn't part of that school,
no,
then?
He isn't, actually. He's very, very different. But
How about Sam, then?
I wouldn't say he follows that kind of school of thought. He's a bit more aggressive, Sam. Every time I play him, I've played him a few times over the board as well, and he's very direct. He's always going for me. I think the one time I think we had a couple of draws, but the one time I managed to beat him over the board, it was because I used the Armenian school of chess against him. I let him push forward. I basically just huddled on my first 2 ranks, did nothing. He came forward, I grabbed a pawn, and then I curled back up into a ball. And then I think, like 80 moves later, I managed to use my extra material to win the game. But I was pretty scared the whole time. It looked like he was about to break through and attack me at any moment. And that's why I think he's uncomfortable in this position, Sam Sevian, because he wants to be the one doing the attacking. He doesn't want to be the attackee. He doesn't want to be the one who's finding only moves just to survive. And now, okay, just as expected, he couldn't tolerate that pawn any longer, so he grabbed it, and he's just praying that he can find a solution to the black rook, lifting and swinging across towards the white king. We highlighted maybe that the white bishop can come back to the defense. I think that's what he'll be left with. I think that's the only course of action right now for Sevian, finding a narrow path to survival with less than 5 minutes on his clock.
Yeah.
And Aronian, what will he do? Will he just capture this pawn back with the black rook? There's an argument for that one. Or will he try this rook lift, as we just showed?
Yeah. And if the rook lift happens, the way to defend is capturing that pawn with the bishop, as you highlighted. That's the only way. Everything loses on the spot. So he is walking a tightrope. And now, well, Levon has lots of pleasant choices here.
Okay, so what are the choices? Maybe we can jump in because, it looks
he is
so
thinking.
good. It looks so promising, this attack, but no immediate way to win. So the promising choices, Jovanka.
Well, actually, he has the possibility of capturing the bishop. Who would have thought? I didn't think about that at all.
Distracting the white queen away from a nice central square.
Yeah, and after queen takes rook, now actually lifting the rook. It doesn't. It's such a computer variation. This is, by the way, this is a computer variation.
Yeah, Mikhail Tal, though, we mentioned that former world champion. Also, Levon Aronian, some shades of Tal in some of his games. Tal would have sacrificed without thinking. Simon Williams, Ginger GM, he would have suggested this move instantly. But yeah, now suddenly look at the white queen. She's off in the no man's land, off in the middle of nowhere, not able to contribute.
Yeah.
And how does white defend? This is tricky, really difficult.
Well, white has to do the same kind of technique, actually take the pawn. And once the rook swings over, then there's one check, and then do this.
Okay, so you
Oh my goodness me.
He's played it.
He's played it.
So this is the only way for Sevian to defend, using his queen on this diagonal to defend the key pawn. But yeah, let's keep an eye on the players as we show this, because he has indeed just sacrificed his rook on the edge of the board. Wow. Sevian, he hasn't reacted. His only move is to take this rook. But he must be shocked right now. Maybe this wasn't on his radar either. He has to take this rook. He finally does. And now, after the queen is distracted on the edge, suddenly now is the time to attack. This rook is swinging across. And look at the white king, completely abandoned to its own defences. It's going to face 3 attackers as well. The black queen, the black rook, and the black bishop. They are all going to attack this white king. This variation we mentioned, I'm just intrigued, Jovanka, what is going to happen here, for example, if white pushes the pawn? I don't really see black's follow-up. And we're going to see this in action. We're going to see this happen. White's queen does defend the key h2 square for now, but black can just go back and capture this pawn with a check. If the white queen swings back to defend, then black will just ignore this. Black will take this pawn, for example, and the black rook will swing across with a nasty pin. This looks scary.
It looks scary, and it's actually happening over the board. And I think the best move by the computer actually says move the king in the corner.
OK, so in this position, don't jump back with the queen. This is my first instinct, but actually the queen is just a target for the black rook on the next move. And Sevian, of course, finds the best move, and he just hides. He shuffles into the corner. The whole idea is that after queen takes pawn with a check, he can actually block with his own pawn. I mean, this looks scary anyway. Suddenly, black has completely conquered the second rank. Black has picked off a whole bunch of pawns in the process, but at least white is defending this guy with his queen from afar. At least white now has some time to maybe bring his rook into the defence. Oof, it's hanging by a thread, though, for Sevian.
It totally is absolutely petrifying. And I just love the computer evaluation. 0.00. I don't care.
Always.
I'm just like, look at the position. It is wild. It is crazy. And this is why you shouldn't just kind of like judge a position by the computer evaluation, because there is equal positions, but there's also terrifyingly equal positions where someone is walking a tightrope, someone is having to tread very, very carefully.
It's great at noticing the blunders, the bar. It always reacts big time when we do have the blunders. I've noticed that it never favors your move. So it only goes sort of down after. You can never make a genius move according to the computer. It only goes up for you when your opponent makes a bad move, kind of.
Yeah, it's like a parent. You can never impress it, but you can always disappoint it.
It's very strict, the computers.
You can never do right in the eyes of the computer.
Although, did we kind of see it in the game between Ju and Jun and Richard Report?
Oh, yeah.
When Ju made some really, really nice moves in the end.
Sometimes if you're really quick, if you spot something really fast, then the computer might need 2 or 3 seconds, but if you get there first, then you can...
Aha, so that's the trick.
Then you can look at it.
Play great moves really, really fast. That's the only way to impress the computer.
Yeah, it's not easy to do, unfortunately. Fortunately for us. But meanwhile, the position has followed the variation we showed on the board. White's rook now swinging across to attack this black queen. And the black queen has to run. Will she go and grab another pawn? She does so. right now, the material count, if we do a bit of maths here, white has a rook, in return, black has a bishop and a pawn. I say and a pawn because I did a quick count, but yes, black does have one pawn more than white right now. So white is technically a little bit of material ahead, but it's all about the white king. White's king is far more vulnerable than its counterpart. Black's king has enough pawn shelter around it to feel comfortable. And yeah, how is Sevian going to release this tension? The problem here is that although the position might be equal, how do you maintain the equality? You can't force a draw anytime soon, especially with queens on the board. If you can't force the queens off, how do you protect your king, the white king, long term? I don't really see it. OK, he gives a check, first of all, forcing the black king to the side of the board, most likely.
But how about the white rooks? Are they not sort of protecting the white king?
They are. They are just standing there covering some squares.
I was going to say they're not at all protecting the white king. They're not protecting the key second rank.
No, that's true, but they kind of are taking some squares away from the attackers.
So basically, you don't want your rooks on the same line as the king. You want them to stop the sort of the line where the opponent pieces wants to come.
I mean, for example, the ideal setup, the defensive setup for white, one would maybe protect the same line as the king, one would protect the line in front of it. So at the moment, the two white rooks, they're doing the exact same job as each other. So one rook is basically useless. It's like hiring two people to do the same job. These two white rooks, one of them wants to be on a better square, but one of them is kind of stuck next to its colleague there. So I'm not 100% sure what Aronian's considering here. There's only two legal moves. You either move the black king to the edge of the board or you move the black bishop back to block this check from the white queen. Retreating the black bishop looks counterintuitive. It looks wrong. The black bishop's on such a nice square. But I guess he wants to stop something very specific. He wants to stop any further checks. So interesting decision there by Sevian, giving this check with the white queen. And yeah, that's an interesting question. Can the white rooks improve themselves? And actually, just to show this point that you bring up there, Kaya, right now, the two white rooks, especially this one, I'm thinking, this rook, it's just staring at its own pawn. It's not really doing too much apart from covering the first rank. So this is the kind of the problem piece. But if black now runs away from this check and lifts his king to the side of the board, Sevian's plan is to drop back, give another check, and if this check is blocked, now he wants to kind of set up this perfect defensive scenario. He wants to lift his rook up one square, protected by the queen. So the queen guards the third rank, the rook guards the second rank, and this rook guards the first rank. And together, these three pieces, they kind of cover all the holes, at least going across the board. So now, for example, this rook kicks away the black queen. The queen has to retreat far away, and also it protects this vulnerable square. So that's why Levon Aronian, after this queen check, decided he didn't want to put his king on the edge of the board where it would get checked again. He didn't want to allow this time-gaining check for the white queen, so he retreated. So he retreated his bishop, but this bishop is now pinned. It's out of the attack, and Sevian decides, OK, he's going to go back with his queen and guard this square. Only now does Levon Aronian, this is flashy, only now does he put his king on the edge of the board. He's saying, OK, now there's no more checks with your queen. The king is safe here. And, of course, a trap. This bishop is poisoned. It can't be captured because the queen would lose protection of the pawn in front of the king. This would be checkmate. So right now, this bishop cannot be captured. How does Sevian improve his rooks? Big, big question.
Yeah, maybe one that he can't answer, actually, for the time being. He has to just bring his queen back and, again, threaten some checks.
Yeah, to this square or this square, maybe. Maybe this square's more accurate, just so you threaten some checks. And, OK, meanwhile, he's started to harass the black queen. He really wants to kick the black queen off this second rank. This is the target. Of course, it's defended right now, but he just wants to kick away the black queen. Maybe we'll see a bit of a dance here. The black queen moves, the white rook attacks it, the black queen moves, the white rook attacks it. The black queen moves, the white rook continues to attack it. There's nowhere for this queen to hide where it can't get attacked and hit by the white rook. That's actually very clever by Sam Sevian here in the current position. How does this black queen hide from the white rook? You can't hide anywhere on this second rank anymore, and you want to stay on the second rank to attack this pawn.
Yeah. There's nothing for it. I mean, the only option I can see is that, nope.
I mean, if you go back, then at least you're on a bad square now, and white could even get greedy and take this bishop.
Take the bishop. And suddenly white's rooks, they're primed to defend. So, no, I think you have to maintain that connection with the pawn on h2.
Do this dance. Move the queen, attack. Move the queen, attack. Move the queen, attack. etc. And then we go back the other way. We dance right, and then we dance left, and the game will end in a repetition of moves. It looks like maybe the players have justified the computer evaluation of 0.0 after all.
Ah.
Yeah, they've turned a wild position into a drawn one.
Yep. And, well, you know, they do say chess is a draw.
It's just both players playing great chess.
Yeah.
That's it.
And it took me a long time to accept that this can happen. That a game, doesn't matter who you're playing against, can just end perfectly with a draw. Both players played exceptionally well. The end.
Yeah.
I always thought that, you know, somewhere or other you had to, you know, win everything. And it wasn't until I started working with a Serbian grandmaster that he kind of helped me see that, no, it's okay. Sometimes a draw is a fair result. And talking about wanting to win, Levon Aronian says, no, I do not want to be involved in this dance. I do not want to do that tango. And instead steps back the queen to the third row, protecting the bishop. But this is not an aggressive move at all. This is just passive.
Computer does not like it.
Computer hates it, and that's because Black has completely gone away from his pressure on the second rank. We mentioned that having that pressure on the second rank was the only thing that kept Black's attack alive. And now Black's queen is no longer threatening the pawn in front of the white king, so Sam Sevian could get greedy with the white queen, and he's gone to grab a pawn. Right now, he's a rook for bishop up. That's a significant advantage. That will be decisive in any endgame. So, yeah, what is Levon Aronian's justification? I don't see it.
Is he planning to maybe just, I was going to say, use the bishop now as an attacker?
Yep.
And, OK, the question is, how is White going to think about defending that pawn? First of all, he has a few checks, but that's probably not a good idea to throw them in.
We also mentioned that using the white rooks on the second rank is the ideal defensive setup. Maybe one of the white rooks, I'm not sure which one, but one of the white rooks could step up to the second rank, defend across the board again.
And
there we go.
Yep.
Defending the pawn in front of the white king. That's the key target. That's the only target actually in White's position right now. And I think Levon Aronian, he just played a one-move trick, basically, and it's been thwarted, it's been stopped. And I don't see it. White's queen can come back to the centre, give check anytime, as you mentioned. White's queen is also attacking one of the black pawns on the f7 square. What's the follow-up? What has Levon Aronian got in store for us? If he doesn't find anything now, he's just going to lose.
And capturing that pawn is a big threat as well. So, yeah.
He could have forced a draw. Instead, he's gambling with his future in this game. Fortune favours the brave, they say, but this is maybe a bit too brave.
I think this is a product of his tournament situation. You know, he's been struggling a little bit. Yesterday was a bad day. And we saw that when humans are playing chess, psychological issues are at stake. And often people tend to take dubious, gambles and risks. I mean, we saw it in the World Championship match as well with Nepomniachtchi. You know, first of all, he spurned a draw when Magnus offered it, and then he decided to play really aggressively. And here we kind of have the same situation.
Yeah.
He had a chance for a draw, and instead he's gone for the option of suffering for the draw, if that's going to happen.
Yeah, Aronian, suddenly he's been thinking for a minute and a half now. I think he's suddenly realising that just one rush of blood to the head and he's got to fight for this result all over again. He's back to square one. He's material down as well, which isn't ideal. And, OK, this is a step in the wrong direction. Moving the rook away from the white king. Protecting a pawn, yes. Maybe he can protect this rook next move, and he's got a nice setup, defensive setup there. But that's the key word, defensive. He's shaking his head a moment ago, Levon Aronian. I think it's a miracle if he holds this game now.
Wow. He's really struggling against the youngsters. He lost yesterday to Arjun Nergaisi. He lost a game earlier today against Jeffrey Chong. And maybe also Samuel Sevian will win his game against the top-rated player in the tournament, the oldest player in the tournament as well, Levon Aronian.
Yeah. And Sevian, this is a nice move, offering a trade of queens and at the same time...
Forcing a trade of queens.
Yeah.
You were going to say at the same time?
Because that suddenly dawned on me, like you say, when you said forcing the queen, I was like, there's no other option. It's game over.
I think it might well be game over. And Levon Aronian, he's about to go down to another defeat because look at what's about to happen. This last move, this really, really sneaky move by Sam Sevian, putting his queen on this square. not only is he offering the queen trade, but as Jovanka mentioned, he's pinned this black rook to the black king. So if black wants to avoid a queen trade, which would be terminal, then where do you put the black queen? No matter where you put it. For example, if you swing it across, white's rook is just going to lift up the board. And can you prevent the queen trade anymore? Are you just about to lose material? It looks that way. Maybe you could make an argument for throwing the bishop in the way, but you're just walking into a pin on this rank. You're walking into a pin on this diagonal. It just looks terrible for black. And yeah, I mean, I just don't see any other way in this current position. No matter where you put the queen, if you put it on this side of the board, the white rook still comes up, hitting the black queen, hitting the black rook. And remember, the black rook is completely paralyzed along this diagonal. White will win material. And that's the question. If the queens do come off, then after queen takes queen, for example, the reason this is so hopeless, even if you win a pawn as black, is because white has this guy. White has a passed pawn. And this pawn is simply going to run up the board, supported by actually one of the rooks behind. And next move, push, push, push. You'll make a new queen and win the game. It's that simple at this moment. So if the queens disappear, it is 100% hopeless for black. Levon Aronian needs a trick. He needs to keep the queens on the board, but it might come at material loss.
Wow, it's looking great for Sam Sevian. And Jeffrey Chong, he was on top of the table before this round. He has just lost his game to Richard Report. And with a win in this game, Sam Sevian will take the sole lead in the FTX road to Miami preliminaries. Super impressive by the 21-year-old. And look at that, another win for Ju Wen-jun. She just won her game against Sam Shanklin. How well impressed and happy are you to see Ju?
I'm ecstatic to see Ju Wen-jun do so well. You know, she is a great player, and she is really an inspiration. You know, our quiz of the day is asking about champions. Ju Wen-jun is one of them.
Yeah.
And I'm so proud for her, because we've actually often seen the women come on and they've struggled a little bit, but here she just seems to be in her element. She's just getting better and better. 3 wins in a row.
She's in contention for qualification to the knockout stage.
I
She would be the
love
first
to see her do that.
That would be amazing. We're going to keep a close eye on Ju Wen-jun. She's playing some fantastic chess, but so is Sam Sevian. David, you're saying he is about to win this game?
I think so. This last rook move, it wasn't the one that I was maybe expecting, but this still puts pressure on the black queen and maybe forces the black queen to an even worse square. Remember, she has to defend her rook, and that's not easy in the first place. I think a queen exchange is imminent, and if that ever happens, it will be a white win. So Sevian, he can just bully Aronian constantly due to the pin along that diagonal, due to any queen trades. He can just say, OK, I'm offering a queen trade, you retreat. I'm going to offer another queen trade, you go to an even worse square. Eventually, something will give. And Aronian, we nearly never see him in this situation. 1 minute on the clock for Aronian. I can't remember the last time I saw him in such bad time trouble.
No. He's normally so quick.
Normally so quick.
Yeah, and OK, well, now he's struggling over the board. The queen has to move to defend the rook. And you can just see it on his face. He's not happy, he's shaking his head. And it will be running through his mind as well that, you know, he should have just accepted the draw when it was offered to him on a plate. Why did he do this to himself? It was totally self-inflicted. But we do this in chess.
Yeah. And we do love the fighting spirit.
Yeah.
Yes.
Fighting chess index will improve due to this game, but he will regret that. It was only 5 moves ago. He could have pretty much forced a draw. 5 moves later, just suffering, and down to 15 seconds on the clock, Aronian. Hopeless position. I'm surprised the computer only says plus 2.5 for white.
Yeah.
Look at this. The queens, Sam Sevian has forced them off the board. All he needs to do now, take this one back with your pawn, swing the white rook across, support the white a-pawn, and start motoring it up the board.
Yeah.
It's just inevitable now. It might take a while if black, for example, uses the rook to go and blockade white's passed a-pawn, as he does, but it is inevitable. Yeah. White's other rook will kick away the black rook at any moment. White's king can join the fun. It's a matter of time.
It is totally a matter of time. And also, it's not that difficult for Sevian to do this, because he just has to keep pushing forward with his pawns. And he has 2 rooks, basically. And the rooks are better than the bishop. And as David says, you've got to remember that endgame maxim, teamwork makes the dream work. So don't forget to use your king as well. Yep. Use every single piece, and the goal, push forward with the pawn.
2 rooks are better than 1. That's the motto here. Black's bishop as well just hits thin air. It's got no stable squares. And it's all about this pawn. Alice, the A pawn, is going to win the game.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think Levon Aronian, he's just playing out of inertia right now. He knows that he's about to lose, but it's hard to just admit defeat. Maybe he'll try and set one final trap somehow. I don't ever see that happening, to be honest, but look at this. The white rooks are just going to kick away the black pieces.
And, well, if Sam Sevian wins this game, it's looking great for him right now. He's guaranteed to be on top of the table heading into day 3 because he was supposed to face Timur Ajabov in the final round today, but that will be a walkover win for Samuel Sevian. What a day.
If he wins plus the walkover win, that's 5 in a row, I think, for Sam Sevian.
Wow, that must be close to a record in the tour.
Yeah, it might well be.
5 in a row.
And he won another one yesterday as well. So I think he'll have, after this, assuming he wins this game, it'll be 6 wins, no defeats from the first 2 days. That's a mighty score.
It's a very impressive score. And suddenly it is the e-pawn that has marched its way. And the goal is very simple. That rook that black has, it needs to move. It's going to be challenged any time now. And Levon, yeah, he's just playing because he can't bring himself to resign.
Yeah, he just moves his king across. White's king is going to step into the centre. White's rook first, as Jovanka mentions, is going to kick away the black rook. And this pattern is going to continue. Black's rook eventually will have to step back. It gets kicked away. Okay, now it's trying to activate. But Sevian says, no checks for you. The white rook is just going to swing across to the b file and go up to the 7th rank. And that will be game over. White's king also has a clear path towards the black rook. Nothing to do.
Yeah.
Yep, just stopping black's pawns from advancing.
It's all very nice technique from the young American. And this is where you think, why do pawns have to turn into queens when they get promoted all the way to the end of the board? Why are the rules of chess like that? Why can't they just stay pawns and just, I don't know what they can do. But anyway, the white rook is threatening to come. Okay, so Levon is trying to create some kind of counterplay, but Sevian is saying, no, that's it. The white king is coming forward. And again, the king can step forward or to the d5 square. The white rook can also move to b3 and again get onto the golden 7th row. That just is nothing to do.
Nothing to do. 15 seconds on the clock.
Yeah.
Yep, hopeless. Not much else to say, unfortunately.
Yeah. Definitely tough position for the Armenian. He gives a check. And maybe it's time for Sevian to get tempted and switch tack. Because the black king is there on the edge of the board, so it might be tempting just to put the king on f5 and go for checkmate instead.
Yeah, that would be a very fancy way to finish the game.
Yeah, look at Aronian. He is just fidgeting. He is not comfortable. He knows he's losing this game, I guess. Another loss against a youngster. A bunch of the other games have finished a win for Anish Giri against Radoslav Wojtacek. All right, so it's looking better for Anish Giri today. He really struggled yesterday, but the Dutchman is back. And Duda also winning his game against Hans Niemann. Richard Rapport won his game against Jeffrey Chong. That means Samuel Sevian will overtake first place. And as mentioned, Ju Wen-jun winning another game. And this one against Sam Shanklin, who is struggling a lot. Sam Shanklin, he is one of the top-rated American guys. He is ready to play in the Olympiad for the US team, but struggling in this tournament.
He's also one of the most well-prepared guys, and he's the author of several chessable courses, which are amazing, I have to say. And yeah, so it's kind of surprising to see him not do so well. Yeah. But having said that, he's also one of the few grandmasters who's very honest about how he feels the pressure when he's playing the tournaments. That, you know, he enjoys studying a lot, but it's something completely different when he's sat there and he has to make those moves himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's very emotional, and that, I think that comes with pros and cons. It means you can be a very form player if you're feeling happy. When Sam's on form, he's on fire, he tends to go on winning streaks. But yeah, when things aren't going so well, that can affect you. And that seems to be the case so far for Shankland. Meanwhile, there was a big threat on the board. White's rook was going to swing across, deliver checkmate. Levon Aronian has prevented that. The black king now has one escape square, but I don't think this is going to be a permanent solution, unfortunately. After a pawn trade now, I think white is still coasting to victory in this game. White's pawn as well, the A pawn, can step forward any moment, and black's bishop will have to give itself up for that white pawn. So the evaluation bar now ever increasing, up to nearly +8 for white. That means white is about to go even further up on material and win this game.
And pawn takes pawn played. King takes pawn, the only move.
Yep.
Nothing to be done apart from that.
The king could slide across one square maybe, but yeah, it doesn't change the evaluation of the position. This move will cost black his bishop, and Levon Aronian is gambling all of his hopes on the black H pawn. The problem is white has 2 rooks with which to stop it, and one of the white rooks will at some point swing across. Simply nothing to do, and I think we there have a result. Sam Sevian wins a really impressive game.
Wow.